When you're starting out your business in the sports and rec industry, it can be very tempting to go towards easily accessible, oftentimes even free tools like Google Forms. Sometimes we think of JotForm, Shopify, WooCommerce, like those big names in the e-commerce space. But anybody who's listening to this podcast who has a little bit of experience will be able to tell you that those maybe sometimes free tools at the beginning end up costing you a lot in the end because they're very limited and they are not adapted for the sports and rec industry. And so at some point you will have to switch, and the more embedded you are in those tools, the more that switch can be costly. So we're going to talk about that this episode. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Amplify. I'm your host, Will. I'm here with Ollie. How you doing, Ollie?
Good. You?
Very good. Shaking off the holiday rust.
Absolutely.
So let's jump right in. This is going to be a good one. So a lot of people come to us. They're using Google Forms. Oftentimes they're even using Google Sheets, to track their data and all this. And we see a lot of frustrated clients. This often falls apart pretty quickly. And sort of the idea that we want to push here in this podcast, we want to encourage you to think about switching to a dedicated platform for sports and rec sooner than later. We'll just put it that way, sooner than later.
Yeah.
And so in this episode, we're going to talk about like pain points that we see a lot of people come with and a lot of the limitations of these like free or popular style tools that exist on the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're starting off, let's say a karate club, you're starting a dance class that you're renting a place and you have, 20, 30 students, maybe less. I think these tools can make sense, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're kind of a, one man, one woman shop, you're running everything, all your clients, and you don't mind doing the manual kind of work to get used to it, and you don't need to automate it right away. Now, as you grow, that'll become difficult, right? So these tools that are not like created for service-based, kids programs, a lot of times will bring in limitations really early on.
Yeah.
So the question is, okay, what are those limitations, and what is the gap from you to going from a free tool to maybe a small payment for a software that will actually free up time, reduce manual task? So I think that's where a lot of businesses when they're starting off can be in that situation.
Absolutely. And like one of the big problems that we have with these tools is that they don't scale for the service industry. So you do run into roadblocks sooner or later. So I guess the first big point is that Google Forms in particular, and a lot of these other systems, do not have at least proper integrated payments.
Yeah.
Right? So whenever you create a redirect from, let's say, one form sends an email, which is probably coming from another software, and that email is like, hey, you can pay this way, that way, creates a lot of friction.
Yeah, I think it creates friction at the client level who's registering, but also on the admin side. So if I take registration on a Google form, all I get after is the sheets with all the people who registered, right? So I got to go manually invoice every single person. I had a client recently tell me they were using Google Forms. They came in and they were not collecting. They were missing a lot of money. And one of the reasons they didn't have that many clients. I think they had like 50 or 60 clients. So they were smallish and they were doing everything manually. But they realized at the end that they were like not collecting a lot of funds. People were coming, were not paying. Like the tracking was very hard, right? So they were like, wow, let's pay for a software, right? And let's get that structured so we know who has paid, who hasn't paid, maybe even force payment upon registration. You don't have to do that at first if you're not like not too confident, or you don't want to spend, around registrations. But what you want to do is have a form where people can register and automatically creates an invoice. Mm-hmm. So I always give the example that if a client comes to register and they fill out your form and you have to contact them when you're ready, at that point, they might not be ready to pay. So even if they're willing clients that want to pay, they want to do it during registration. Even if it's offline and they just send you an e-transfer or they send you a check, whatever it is, they want the invoice right away. That's what's expected in every time you purchase something online, you get an invoice right away.
Yeah.
So you want to automate that, and then that'll save you quite a lot of time, but it's also, you're reducing friction at the client level to get them to pay. Yeah. One of the most frustrating things is chasing people for payment, right? So if you can reduce friction, it helps a lot.
Absolutely. And when you have an integrated payment system, so the registration happens, the invoice is generated, the payment could be taken offline. Even if it is, you have a way to track invoices really easily. Yeah. And that's a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And, you know, you're talking about this business who had 50, 60 clients. Well, that's really not that much.
No.
You know what I mean? And so and I would even say maybe as soon as you get to like 30, 40, you should start that's something to track.
Yeah, right? It is something to track, and you have to do it manually.
Yeah.
And the things you were doing at 20, as soon as you get to 60, it just doesn't work. There's more support coming in. There's all these things that a software will actually kind of help you streamline all those things.
Yeah, 100%. So another big limitation with these softwares that are not made for the service industry is you cannot easily automate confirmations.
Yes.
And you can definitely not do SMS reminders.
Yeah. So when you register, right, you want to get a confirmation email. That is limited in Google Forms. So again, you might have to email people. You might want to, you know, let's say you sign up for camp 2 months in advance. It would be nice to have an automated email go out 7 days before camp starts with all the details, right? So taking stuff off your plate with different automations and making sure the communication is up to par with parents and kids so they know what to expect when they're coming in. Is super important, right? So those automations are really, really important. And like you were mentioning, you're going to collect phone numbers, you're going to collect emails as they register on your form. Yeah. You want to be able to use that. Like, do you really want to text from your phone? And when you start, everybody starts like that. It's okay. You know what I mean? Like, that's a normal process when you're starting a business.
Right.
But at some point, you probably don't want all your clients to have your number, right? And at some point, you'll have to cancel a class for 60 people at the same time because there's a snowstorm, there's a power outage. And are you really going to text 60 people? Like it just from your phone.
What's your list on that?
Yeah,
like, how do you...
yeah, exactly. So it's just one of those things where it's like you need those features. And when you really specifically need texting or communications, you don't want to have to go get your list, go to your Excel sheet, find the 7 people in that class, you know, text them manually or email them from Gmail. Like it just adds a lot of friction, and it makes everything heavier for you, right? Yeah. Again, very manageable at first, but it gets harder when you scale.
And it makes everything error prone too.
Yes, 100%.
Oops, forgot that person. Oops, you know.
Oh, I sent it to the wrong class or
right. Yeah. Exactly. So related to that, of course, limited automation. You don't get, you know, not only those confirmations, but all of the workflows that are possible when everything's integrated, from registration to client database to invoicing. You know, when all of that is integrated, that opens the opportunity for really interesting workflows that you can do to communicate and also to operate.
Yeah. And just to scale your business, right? Yeah. If you have a smooth registration process with automated and personalized communications that kind of come after, your client knows what to expect. You know that the system is going to help you kind of amplify and help your communications throughout the whole process. And then you can go back to focusing to growing your business, right? Yeah. Hiring staff, giving more classes, you know, just being more like in the moment of where you actually should be serving the most and letting the software do the rest. And at first you kind of see it as like I'm saving money. So if I go to Google Forms, it'll cost me $0 instead of taking something else that's like $199, $129 a month. But you'll quickly realize that, like, you know, $99 a month, and let's just imagine it saves you 10 hours and have headaches. Like, that's below the minimum wage. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
under $10 an hour.
Exactly. And it doesn't allow you to spend those hours growing your business. Yeah. You're just kind of doing all this admin stuff.
So it's actually more expensive than that.
Exactly. That software should be doing.
Yeah.
And then the whole idea is like, if somebody, like, you know, when should this change be made? Because I still believe Google Form is a good solution if you're like testing something out.
Yeah.
You're not sure if you're going to get any revenue, so you might not want to pay. But like, as soon as you start scaling 40, 50 kids, and maybe even before, and you start hiring, I think that's a big one too. Because once you hire someone, how are they going to access attendance lists? You know, how are they going to know who paid, who hasn't paid? It's not in your head anymore. It's not just your system. So you got to start planning for hiring and for growth and expansion.
Right. Right. Because a good solid registration platform can also handle internal communication
100%.
as well as communication with clients.
This episode is sponsored by Activity Messenger, an online registration software I helped build after spending more than a decade managing kids' sports programs and dealing with outdated, disconnected tools that slow everything down. I know the frustration of using a bunch of old tools that don't sync, don't scale, and definitely don't make life easier. Activity Messenger is built to fix that. Our goal is to be your all-in-one operating system, modern, mobile first, and to simplify your entire workflow. Want to check it out? Visit activitymessenger.com to book your free demo. Now, let's get back to the show.
So another aspect here is analytics.
Yeah.
And, so you do get analytics with a tool like Google Forms, or JotForm has pretty good analytics on their forms as well, as far as I know. But you won't necessarily get, how can I say, like business-specific analytics. Specific to your business, specific to the registrations. Like, who's registering to your classes? And when? And how old are they? And where do they live? And
once you have like a form that has class-based programs and all that kind of stuff, it's really easy for you to then say, okay, let's look at all my programs, let's say with a tag for 4 to 5 year olds, and see like, hey, they're all at 90% full versus my 6 to 7 year old is at 30% full, right? So maybe I can merge two of those programs and open up another one in that age group, and kind of like, better position your programs. So getting that data is super important for all those reasons. And then, a lot of other data is you might be working with sensitive data. So if you're running a camp, you're getting medical information, you might be getting immunization reports or things like that because you need that at camp. Google Forms is probably not the best, place to do it. Like it's not the most secure, it doesn't have all the security levels.
Well, you don't have really any encryption service, right?
So it becomes very, like, should we be collecting that data? So now what do? You do it by email and you do it over the phone. So again, depending on the data you're getting, you're going to want that analytics, but just be able to kind of see all the data so you can run your programs throughout.
Yeah, and you talked about, like tailoring your program when you can notice that one class has less registering than another, but that's also really good to pivot. If you put out your program and you find that one is trailing behind, but another class is completely full, well, let's maybe double this full class and open more spots and just replace this one that's struggling.
Yeah, right? And even like, one thing, an automation that is important data as well is like, let's say on Google Forms, you don't have a wait list, right? So if you start programs, when you're starting off, you just want as many kids as possible. But then you might be renting a place that can only fit 12 kids.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, how do you limit your registration form? Right? But that's also analytics. Because if you're able to limit it to 12, and then within 3 days you have 7 kids on the wait list, like that's information that you can collect and be like, oh, what do I do with that? Maybe I need to open up another class, right?
Yeah.
And those are revenue generated ideas versus people coming in, you might have removed it or said it's full, and then you just don't know what's going on, right? You might have 100 people coming into your form, not filling it out because it's full. You just don't have an idea, right?
I mean, I guess if you're working with Google Forms, you would have to just straight up close your form when it's full, right? You have
or
to
put a
manually
link
do it
to a wait list that's not completely adapted to the same class. Like there's some workarounds. I'm not saying it's not possible, but having it, specifically to the class and automated for them to get a text when a spot opens up, just kind of, streamlines again.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so that was our next point covered. No attendance tracking. Yep. And along with that, just tracking all this information, there's customer accounts.
Yes.
What's important to think about in terms of customer accounts?
Yeah, I think most class management software have what we call a customer portal, where when I register my kids for a program, I can go back in, see my invoices, change my credit card number, see a calendar of all the classes that are coming up, maybe have not drop-ins, but canceled class where I can go and cancel and do a makeup class. So there's a lot of things that happen in there. And if you don't have it, and you send manual invoices because they signed up on Google Forms, and then 6 months later, like, I need this for, whatever reason, you're like, I don't know where the invoice is. You got to go back in your emails versus, okay, as you're scaling, imagine at some point you're at 150 registrants and they all want their invoice. They just connect to their account. You don't even know they went and got their invoice, right? It's just part of the process. You don't even know that they requested a makeup class and switched, that one makeup class from Monday to Thursday. They just go and do it. And that's beautiful. You don't have to have all those things in your mind of that makeup class. I need to send that invoice over there. and then it just bogs you down in details. You shouldn't be working on. You should be working on other things.
Yeah. So common thing here, having the software work for you.
Yeah.
Do things that you would otherwise do, and that frees up hours. And we all know that an admin's hours is invaluable. It's hard to put a price on that because you're like the one thinking about everything, and making everything grow. So that's definitely going to affect growth in the end.
100%.
And not only the ability to handle more clients, but also the ability to, like we said earlier, like work on your business, actually progress things.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about invoicing as well. Having an automatic invoicing system is very helpful because if you're tracking invoices manually, how are you making those? Are you generating PDF invoices on, I don't know, something like Canva or...
Yeah, a lot of people will use, from what I've seen, is just like an accounting software that you have a free version where you can do some invoicing, but it's just so much manual work, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Like you want a software that's going to take all the details from the customer, flip it with your details on the invoice. It's just a perfect invoice every single time based on what they took,
right,
and then just come and pay, and you never have to figure out invoices again, right?
Exactly. And not only is that creation taken care of, the email is sent out automatically with the invoice, but also the tracking.
Yeah.
So even if you're doing offline payments, you can easily see which invoices are unpaid, and it helps a lot. And you can take that invoice and send it straight to that person as a reminder to pay for the invoice.
And even your end of month kind of summary for your accounting, like, if it's all individual invoices, what's paid, what's not paid, just get a nice report, everything's there. So
100%. One thing that happens a lot too in the service industry is waivers.
Yeah.
A lot of waivers. What are the advantages of having integrated?
I think, one thing that some forms don't do is you want to collect the whole process of the client, right? So the whole workflow. So they want to register. What are the classes? Get them to sign their waivers, get them to give you the information they need about their children, and then get them to pay and get the invoice. So that that as soon as somebody is on the attendance list, they've clicked all those things. There are no other ways to get on the attendance list apart from filling out those things, right?
Yeah.
And that just removes the whole headache on you. Just like I just got to look, I know the waiver's signed, right?
Yeah.
So that helps a lot. And you can structure it better. You can have, more kind of cohesive waivers that are easier to understand, easier to fill out. And a lot of times, people just don't have it. So they'll take registration on Google Forms and then have a paper waiver at the front desk.
Yeah.
Like those are things that can happen, right? So again, you want to kind of connect everything into one place.
Yeah. And knowing that waiver is signed is pretty invaluable because then you can focus on different things on day one when you're,
instead of having everybody coming in, please sign this waiver.
Please sign this, creates a lineup. I don't know, all this stuff, right? So, and you can miss some that way.
100%.
It's pretty easy to miss
and
some.
that's security. Like this is, a lot of times we're working with children in these types of programs.
Yep.
Like we need, it could be a swim class. Like we need these things signed for your liability, but also for parents coming in and knowing what they're getting into. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And so I was going to say the final point, but actually there's another one too that we haven't really touched on is the whole issue with like branding and client trust.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're not necessarily saying this is a huge thing, but when someone lands on a Google form as a registration form, there could be something in the back of their mind that it's like, should I trust this organization? Like, who is this? Are they professional? Are they serious?
Yeah. Are they big enough?
Are they big enough?
Are they going to close? Like again, when you're starting off, it's normal. I'm not saying you should not use Google Forms, but as you scale, you're going to get more and more people that are not referrals. Because at first, a lot of times it's referrals, but then you'll have Facebook ads, people finding you, and you'll put this nice Facebook ad or a nice Facebook post, and they click and it goes to a Google form.
Right.
I'm not saying you're going to lose all your clients, but it does send kind of a signal that like it's a smaller business, and that could potentially scare people away, right? How structured are they? How good is this program? Even though you might be giving the best program, it's just what's kind of coming out, right? What people are seeing versus they're coming in on a really nice form. It's built. You can see it's professional. It's integrated on the website. It just gives that extra edge when you can brand everything and not be on Google Forms.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't want to blow up the point more than we have to, but I think it's important, especially in the service industry, because, your client, some client who says no at the beginning could potentially have a long-term, lifetime value.
Yeah.
A client who returns 2, 3, 4 times is a very valuable client to have. And that's building a relationship too. So on a human level too, that's interesting. What was I going to say? I had another point, but I forgot it.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would want to kind of jump in, and if it comes back, is I think, one thing we're saying here is that there is a place for these free tools. And I've seen people start on Shopify, on WooCommerce, selling classes, selling programs. Like those are made for items. Those are made for products. You don't have an attendance list. There's no dates. I had somebody switch over recently and I was like, how they just grew really quickly. And that can happen. Mm-hmm. You're running programs and people start talking, they're growing really rapidly. And they were on Shopify running programs. It was a nightmare. Great product, honestly. Shopify, obviously, really, really good. Yep. But when you're looking at all the context of running programs, it was never designed for that, right? So they switched over, went a lot better. But what I'm trying to get at is if you're in that situation, a lot of times I've met a lot of people that are like, cool, I'm ready to move away from Google Forms. But when I meet class management software, I am overwhelmed.
Right.
These are softwares that are made for, businesses when they're further down the line, that they don't need a Google form anymore, that they're growing. And there's this big gap where it's like, drop like the simplicity of Google form, get all these features, huge learning curve for you, for your parents as well, for the clientele. And a lot of people are scared of that jump, right? So I think what you might want to be looking for is a tool that is form-based, right? So a class management software that is form-based, that will help you replicate your Google form, but add all the features you need for class management. Yeah. So I think that's one thing that we can mitigate that gap, because I meet people all the time. They're like, I got a WordPress form, I got a Google form. And it's like, but then when I show them on the product and activity master, I'm like, look, we're going to reproduce this. We're just going to add this. It's going to look the same. It's just going to look more professional. And you're going to have all the features you don't have in Google Forms, plus everything that comes after with the communications. Right, exactly. It's going to look the same, but better, because it's going to be branded. Exactly. It's going to look like you. And it's also going to have all those connected tools. Exactly. Right, which is huge. And that sort of leads us into the final point, which, you talked about the learning curve. And yeah, a lot of these platforms can have definitely a learning curve, even ones with familiar aspects. And so one thing that you will not get with Google Forms is customer support. Yeah. Yeah. So if you run into a problem, well, you're on your own, bud, 100%. And the tool is a generic tool, right? I mean, you want to do surveys, you want to do a forms for a birthday, like it's a great tool for generic stuff. But if you are going to double down in your business, in your niche, you're going to want a form tool that only develops for that niche, right? And doesn't look at this wide net of like any kind of form, right? Like has the class component, and that has the support there too. Like I like to mention, when you get on a support call and you're starting business, it's probably when you get the most value, because you didn't think of a million things, and the person at the customer success on whatever software you're building, they've seen like dozens, if not hundreds of organizations just like yours. And then they help you streamline and give you ideas on how to structure your form. So you can get a lot of value just by using the tool, but just by even contacting and talking with people, with experts in the industry, right? So absolutely. So that's really invaluable in my opinion. So, with all these points, I think our goal here was to sort of help you to see a little bit further, down the line, because sometimes when we're starting out, it's really easy to just have your view kind of cluttered with everything that you have to do now and all that you're thinking about. And sometimes, oftentimes it's exciting and you're getting a whole bunch of new stuff. You're learning new tools, coming up with new ideas. But if we could help you see a little further down the line, and maybe we convinced you that getting an actual registration software sooner than later is totally valuable and worth your money and worth your time. Well, then this has been a success. Absolutely. You got anything else to add to that? No, that's good. No, all right. So, if you want to also just grow your business, you need to have those operational systems, right? And those are going to be not impossible, but a lot harder to build with
free and entry-level tools.
Yes.
So, yeah, there you go. If ever you have questions, comments, suggestions for future episodes, we love to hear your comments. So just drop them wherever you can, down below the video, wherever you listen to the podcast. And we want this to be, as always, a conversation. So we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. See you, bye.
Stay well.